Where are you going? Get back here. Come on. Oh my god. He's a menace. Oh my. Hi guys, my name is Rachel and welcome back to another book video. Today we are doing my very first summer wrap-up. I've never done a wrap-up video before. I've never done a monthly one. I've never done a quarterly one. This is Alfred. He's a new addition to the family if you haven't seen my other videos. But I've been seeing a lot of people do a summer wrap-up and I thought it would be a fun way to recap the books that I've read. Most of the time I incorporate them into reading vlogs, but not always. Sometimes I just read for my own leisure. So this will be a fun way to summarize all my reads this past summer. I've been reading a lot more than I ever anticipated this year, so I'm very, very excited to share with you my summer reads. So let's just get into it. I classify summer as June, July, and August. So those are the months that I'm going to be picking from. At the end of fall, at the end of November, I'll do a fall wrap up, and then winter, and then spring. But these are the 3 books I have in person. I have my phone in front of me to keep track of all of the audiobooks and Kindle books that I read. We will get to the physical ones. Should we do the physical ones first or should we do them in order? Let's do them in order. So, the first book I read, I finished it on the 3rd, was The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom by Sherry Frankie. This book was absolutely devastating on every level. I'm just gonna like read through my review on Goodreads. I said heartbreaking on every level. I didn't know much about the family outside of a few headlines that I saw. I recently watched one of the documentaries and decided to pick up the book as a way to learn more about their story and support their like growth. The things their mother put them through are appalling and disturbing on every level. There are no words to describe the amount of pain and anguish. I can only assume they were / are in. I wish all of those children peace and comfort as they heal from such a horrible mother. If you don't know the Frankie story, they were YouTubers called 8 Passengers, I believe was their title. It was a mom and all of her kids and they were like vloggers and they would post all the time and she really took advantage of her children. Even way back in the day when it first started, she just didn't really care for them and then the abuse just continued to get worse and worse and worse to the point where she would leave them alone, neglect them for long periods of time. She wouldn't feed them. And then at the very end, they found 2 of her children locked in a closet, I believe it was, with like tape and burns. It's very horrible. That stuff I more so know from the documentary that I watched. There's plenty of documentaries and YouTubers recapping the case. It was very, very publicized. But this is Sherry's book, the oldest daughter of that family. She wrote a book basically detailing her journey because she was an eldest daughter. She was kicked out of the house first, so she wasn't there for a lot of the stuff, but she also had her own turmoil and issues with her mother because she wasn't allowed to see her siblings at that point. Her mother completely cut her off from her father, her oldest brother, and then the rest of their younger siblings, and it's just an awful, awful story. But if you want to learn more about that story and support Sherry and her journey, this book is a 100% recommend for me. I know some people don't write memoirs. I usually do, but I usually give them a 5-star regardless because I find people's stories so fascinating and heartwarming and heartbreaking and all of the above. I of course rated a 5-star. I usually always rated a 5-star, but especially this family, they have been through hell and back and I just wish them the best going forward. Highly, highly recommend if you want to hear not a celebrity memoir per se, but more of like an influencer from Utah type of background. It's a very, very interesting book. The next book I read was Hula by, I don't know if it's Jasmine or Yasmin, Ilani Haikis. I am butchering the pronunciation. I believe it's a Hawaiian author, so I am so sorry for the mispronunciation. As someone who is not Hawaiian, I felt like I didn't register with the book to its fullest extent. In my review, I said, as someone who is not Hawaiian, it is hard to understand the complexities and the impact of its book at its fullest intent. I also struggled to keep up with who was narrating at what times. The first half of the book read like a memoir, and it took my mind time to wrap around the dynamics at play. Overall, it was very interesting to learn about since the Hawaiian people have gone through so much. As someone who's not Hawaiian, I can't fully grasp the complexities and the pain and the suffering at play, but I did think it was very interesting to read about their culture. But I will say the book as a whole, it is a fictional book, but for most of the book it kind of read like a memoir, so it was hard for my brain to kind of decipher what I was reading because it felt like a memoir based on the way the story was written, but it wasn't a memoir, so I was just kind of confused. It kind of took me out of the story. I ended up rating it 3 stars. I think it's still an interesting read. I always love learning about new cultures and about things that I never would have known beforehand. Being from the Midwest, I haven't even been to Hawaii before, so it was nice to know more about that culture. And I'm open to reading more stories in the future. I think I just didn't vibe with the writing style of this book, but I think overall it has a lot of good things to say. Alright, the next 3 books are our physical books. So the first book is Collide by Balcabra, I believe. I'm sorry if I'm butchering her name because she is a very, very great author. I love her so much. These two, I made like 5 TikToks just about this book because I loved it so much. It's a hockey college romance between Aiden and Summer. Summer's more nerdy student type. Aiden is kind of that jock hockey player. But the reason I initially picked this book up is because she is a psych college student trying to get into grad school, and when I read this book I was 2 weeks away from graduating college, my graduate program, so it was just resonated with me so much and I absolutely loved it. Let me double check what I said in my review. It says, this was a really cute book. Loved the communication and abandonment of the 3rd act breakup. This is a near perfect hockey romance in my book. Very close to a 5-star read. Aiden is incredible and Summer is a queen. I loved reading about Summer's college/grad school process as someone who is graduating with a psychology degree in 2 weeks. This book ended up rating a 4.5 star. Again, very, very close to a 5-star. I don't really know what more it could have given. It just didn't give me the 5-star feelings, but I really, really loved it. I'm very excited for the other books in the series. I know the next book, Spiral, is out, and then Revolve is coming very, very soon. I love these two so much. They are so cute. I think about them all the time. If you tell me to make it a 5-star, I'll make it a 5-star because that's how much I love it. Next we have Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. If you don't know me, Ali Hazelwood is my favorite author of all time. She has surpassed Emily Henry in my book. I just love her STEM romances so much. Love Theoretically, The Love Hypothesis, Love on the Brain. My top tier STEM romances of all time. I did like Deep End. I have not read Not in Love. This is the one time I read books out of order. Usually with an author like Emily Henry, Ali Hazelwood, Abby Jimenez, I read in publication order because you never know when authors are gonna like drop a little character in, and I think it's fun. For example, Ali Hazelwood, she has the very popular book, The Love Hypothesis, but then she has Love Theoretically, which is the 3rd book, not in a series, but just kind of in her STEM universe. And then Olive and Adam from the 1st book make a little cameo in the 3rd book, and I love stuff like that. So I always like to read in publication order. But this time I saw this book going crazy on TikTok and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna read it. I know it's not in publication order, but I'm gonna read it. And this is the one time I should have read it in order because even on Goodreads it says 2nd in a series. And this book is all about the wedding from the people from Not in Love. And this whole time I'm like, who are these people? Only to find out they're on my shelf. I just haven't read their story yet. Whatever. I made a TikTok about it already and it went semi-viral. I still think it's perfectly fine to read it out of order. It didn't mess with my experience reading it that much. Maybe it would have been a little more nostalgic if I read the other 2 before, but it didn't get in the way of the storyline, if that makes sense. It's a romance book. It's 2 people falling in love. It's their own story. It's always gonna be independent on its own, but if you want that more like cameo nostalgia experience, obviously read the 1st book first. But my review was, I'm kind of conflicted with my feelings on this book. I enjoyed it because I love anything Ali Hazelwood writes, but it's definitely my least favorite of her books. I was very conflicted about Connor. He was too obsessed about Maya's age in my opinion. He kind of ruined the vibe, but I still really enjoyed their story and the setting of a destination wedding. And I stand by that. I rated this book a 4-star. It's still a 4-star. I was just a little thrown off. It is an age gap romance and they do have a big age gap, but when there's an age gap and the main character, the male main character specifically, won't stop talking about their age gap, I'm like, bro, do you want to get in her pants or not? Because you're ruining the vibe. Either tell her to stay away or just let her in. Pick. Don't just string her along and say you love her but then you can't do anything about it, you know? Sometimes he was ruining the vibe, but then at other times he was like the perfect dream of a man. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. But basically they were talking about fantasies and his fantasy was so wholesome and it just like involved her and nothing like crazy out of the ordinary. Like she was talking about like, oh, do you want to dress up? Do you like, you know, chains? Do you like cuffs? Do you like blindfolds? And he was like, no, I just want you. Like that's his fantasy. So cute. 4 stars. I loved it. Then we have one of the most gorgeous books I've ever seen in my life. This is The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. Look at this. This is the Barnes & Noble edition. If you can't tell, it's got a gold foil. Look at that gold. And then it like goes throughout the back. Gold foil. And then, wait a second. Oh, what? Beautiful, beautiful. And then sprayed edges. Beautiful sprayed edges all the way around that match the cover. Stunning, stunning. She's beautiful, but she is a 3-star. This book just did not hit. It did not fire on all cylinders. It was okay. It was enjoyable, but I forgot about it the second it was over. You know that mark when you see that you're like 90% through a book and you're just like, ugh, I just want it to be over? Yeah. It was okay. It was good. I would still recommend it if you want like a Pirates, Curse, Sirens type of vibe. But will I say it's my favorite book of the month? No. Let me see what I said in the moment, because I always forget how I feel in the moment. It says, I was very intrigued by this cover and the Barnes & Noble special edition. It's a very beautiful book and I was interested to discover what it was about. The story was interesting, providing adventure and fantasy, but it didn't hit all the marks that I look for. I would say it's worth the read because you never know what you're going to feel and I may be in a bit of a slump. I do still think about this book from time to time though, so that says something. I'm trying to remember. I think I was in a bit of a slump, so that could be part of it. I just remember this book being only okay. It says, powerful witchcraft, a hunt for sunken treasure, forbidden love on the high seas. Beware of the Amalfi Curse. It's like this cursed piece of water that people try to go through because it's back in the day when you need to travel on ships and stuff, and then there's like witchcraft and sirens and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. The fantasy elements are very cool. It was just okay. And that's all that there is to say. The last book in the month of June that I read was Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This book is so highly talked about. Of course I had to read it. I honestly don't remember much about this book, so I'm gonna read my review. Loved that it was narrated by the author. I honestly didn't know how to feel about this book at first. The book is highly recommended by many people, and at first it didn't really capture my attention at all. But as I went on, it became more intriguing and valuable. Dolly provides a lot of great advice at love and growing up. Great book for anyone who has felt lost or had issues with their identity. That I do remember. I remember this book being filled with a lot of good insights. Like, this book is the epitome of a big sister who's like 5 to 10 years older than you, and she's teaching you everything that she's learned from her 20s and her 30s and like growing up as a woman and making friends and having relationships and just everything about love and heartbreak. And I really valued that. I thought it was good, especially because I'm an only child. I don't have any of these like older sisters to learn from, so I thought it was fun to have a piece of literature that you can read that invokes that kind of feeling. It was a good book. I did rate it a 5-star because I rate almost all memoirs 5 stars, but if it was a fictional book, I probably would have rated it a 4. But it's her story and she had a lot of great things to say, and I don't love to judge someone's story. When it comes to memoirs, the only time I will not rate a 5-star is if I had a problem with the writing of it. Nothing to do with their story, but just the writing of it and how easy it is to listen to or to read. It is hard to get into, I will say. The beginning didn't really capture me, but I wanted to push through because I wanted to hear what everyone else was saying, and I think it is worth it to push through. Again, I feel like it's a very simple, very easy to follow book of advice about love and friendships, and I think that is very valuable, especially in your 20s, especially when you're feeling lost, and especially if you don't have people in your life that are that figure for you. I think it's a good read if you're looking for something like that. Next we have our July books, and I mean book when I say that because in the month of July I only read 1 book. But the reason for this is because my boyfriend's mom was in town all of July, so we were busy doing things. She was staying with us, so in my free time I was spending time with her instead of in my room listening and reading books. So I only got 1 book in. I was also in a bit of a reading slump, so I didn't really feel like picking up any books. I started a lot of books, but I didn't really finish a lot of books in the month of July. But we do have 1 book that I started and finished, and that is called The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. This one I actually listened to on audio and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very fast-paced thriller. It said, very solid thriller, interesting group of characters, multiple narrators / POVs, which I loved, and I thought it added a lot to the story. The author was able to provide so much imagery throughout the story, which helped me picture everything so perfectly in my mind. I don't really know what this book is about, to be honest. I kind of forgot. It says says Ruby McTavish Callahan dies. She's not only North Carolina's richest woman, but she's also the most notorious, victim of a famous kidnapping as a child and a widow 4 times over. She ruled a small town, da 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 da. Ruby is this very, very wealthy lady. She adopts a son named Cam, and he gets all of her inheritance when she dies, but there's kind of strings attached. It says 10 years later, Camden is a McTavish in name only, but a summons in the wake of his uncle's death brings him and Jules back into the family fold at Ashby House. Its views are just as stunning as ever, its rooms are just as elegant, but coming home reminds Cam why he was so quick to leave in the first place. So there's a lot of drama because this family is so wealthy. There's a lot of drama about wills and who gets the house and who gets the name, and like all of these other family members are like influencers and very popular fashion designers and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to kind of hear rich people drama is basically what the thing is. Like, it's rich people drama with a murder mystery. That's kind of the plot. And I remember having a great time. I don't know why I can't remember anything about this book, but I remember some drama between Cam and his wife because they kind of want different things. They come from different backgrounds, and then drama between Cam and his like aunts, uncles, cousins, things like that, because he was adopted and not blood related, so his family thinks that he shouldn't get anything, stuff like that. But if you want to hear about rich people drama with a murder mystery and a thriller aspect, The Heiress is a very good book. I rated it a 4.5. That's crazy that I rated it a 4.5. In that moment, it was a 4.5. I really loved it, and that will be the final rating. So now, going into August, we have quite the stack here. These are just the physical books of August, and then I have some others that I don't have a physical copy of. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. That's why I have such a big summer wrap-up, to me at least, because my reading goal is 50 books. Like, this isn't usually how many books I read, so this is a lot for me, and I've been reading mostly audiobooks, and that's how I keep this reading goal possible. So I don't always have the trophies with me, but sometimes I like to read audiobooks that are already on my physical TBR, so they count as like a double win to get rid of my physical TBR and to have a copy of it. So that's what I did with the first book, called The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. As you probably know, Grady Hendrix is very, very famous for his thriller books. He's very, very well known in the reading space. I got this book long time ago, probably 2021, 2022. This book, I remember being captured from page 1. I love this book so much. It is so interesting and so different from anything I've read before. Let me just get back into my review and what I said. Okay, said this would have been a 5-star, but when children started getting involved, it gave me icky feelings. Super interesting plot and characters though, didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. That's a very short and random review. I do agree with my review, and I'll explain why. It's about a housewife. I believe it's based in the 90s. Yeah, James Harris walks into her life during the summer of 1993, but when I was reading it, it was giving 60s. I listened to this on audio, so I didn't really see the times like in my face, but when I read it, I was picturing the 60s because these guys are living in the 60s. So the main character is Patricia. She is friends with all of these housewives, but they're not into the stuff that the other housewives are into. They like mysteries and thrillers, so they decide to make a book club because they're sick of the other book club who reads all these posh like fiction smarty pants books. They don't want those books. They want thriller, mystery, gore, horror books. So they make their own book club, and they become this like Southern book club. So all the women are housewives, their husbands work full-time, and they stay at home taking care of their kids, and there's a bunch of misogyny drama braided into the story, which is why it kind of feels like you're in the 60s. I can't believe this is still the 90s, but it's a very, very, very crazy book because, as the title says, it involves a vampire in some way. This mysterious man comes into town, and at first he's very weird. He's kind of like the weird kid on the block because no one really knows him. He's kind of awkward, but then you start to learn more and you kind of piece the things together in your head, and it's very, very interesting. I love vampire lore. As you'll find out soon, I'm just finishing up a reading vampire books reading vlog. This had a lot of vampire lore, and I love how vampire lore gets changed and kind of mutated through different pieces of fiction. This vampire lore was a little different. It wasn't my favorite. At first it was really cool, but then it kind of twisted and the victims ended up being children, which I didn't really like, especially with how this vampire specifically feeds. You know, every vampire book has different lore on how they feed, what they feed on, you know, how they get their strength, what what they drink, whatever. This vampire, the way he feeds is more sexually charged, and when the victims ended up being children, it gave me really icky feelings. This book ended up going from a 5-star to a 4-star. This would be a 5-star book if all the victims were adults. Once you start involving children, it just didn't feel right to me. I started to kind of like go like this when I was reading it. I didn't love it, but everything else about it was absolutely perfect, and I love this book. Just be warned that some children are involved. There's no graphic assault or anything like that. It's just that part of the lore. It's a little weird. Be on the lookout for that. But I still recommend this book. It's still very good. The next book on our list is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner, another Sarah Penner book. And this book, again, has been on my TBR for freaking ever. I really enjoyed this book. Let's see. I said, really interesting story. I like when a book includes new things / themes I haven't read about before. Normally 2 different timelines can be boring to me, but this story utilized them both very well and wrapped it all up nicely. Would recommend to anyone who wants a new whimsical story with a bit of mystery and depth. As the title states, The Lost Apothecary, it is about a apothecary store owner back in the day with a little aquatofana, if you've heard of that. If you read a lot of true crime and older stories, when women used to utilize the apothecary to make their husbands very ill if they were being bad to them. So it's a story about a woman back in the day when women had no rights, when women were just property and they were just supposed to submit to their husbands, and how they utilized this apothecary very well and very frequently, and how some men just ended up keeling over for no reason. And then I also like how it transforms into like a current day. I don't remember what the current period is. It just says 200 years later. I don't remember what time period that is. Let me try to find. So the past was 1791, so this would have been 1991. It kind of goes back and forth. Like the current time period is kind of chasing history, trying to figure out like what this place is, what happened here, and the past is telling the story of what happened here. And like my review said, sometimes the 2 different timelines can be boring because usually I favor one storyline, and then anytime they go back I'm like, ugh, like I want to stick with that one storyline. But this one I really liked both storylines, and I thought they both held their own depth and importance, because that's another thing. When a story has 2 different timelines, sometimes I feel like the other one isn't as important as the other one, but I felt like this one, they were both very important and very well written, and I gave this book a 4-star. I do recommend. I think it is very whimsical and fun, and I do like to read about stuff that aren't just fae fantasy or vampire fantasy. Like I want to read about a lost apothecary store where this woman was selling herbs to kill husbands. Like that is a story I don't hear every day. So I wanted to read this book and kind of see what that was all about. The next book we don't have a physical copy of, but it is called One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. I really enjoyed this. I remember this was the combination of Lord of the Rings and Love Island, which was actually really fun because I had just finished Love Island USA season 7, and I thought it was so ironic how this story was so similar. But my review says, this book is like if Love Island and Lord of the Flies had a baby. Very interesting story, but I wish the Love Island part lasted a little bit longer. We only had a few chapters before shit hit the fan. Otherwise, a very interesting story of human behavior amongst chaos. Interesting to think about what people would do in a survival situation like that. So again, in the story, they're kind of setting up this Love Island type of thing, but it's kind of like Love Island with couples, if that makes sense. So 5 couples come to this island to kind of have this game show, like this reality TV show, but then a storm hit and shit hits the fan, like my review said, and things go terribly. They have no reception. They're on a remote island. No one knows where they are. They have very limited food and resources because stuff was supposed to continually coming to the island. Like they were supposed to be getting shipments, but with a storm, like everyone's out of commission. All the boats are gone. All the producers are gone. Everyone's gone. No one can reach them. And then you just kind of see what happens as time goes on, because these are 5 couples who are all strangers. They only know their partner, and they're all just trying to trust each other, trying to form friendships, trying to survive on this island with no resources. So it's very interesting. But like I said, I really wanted to see more of the Love Island part, more of the game before the storm came, because I thought the storm came like 10 or 15% through the book, and I wanted a little more lore before the death and dying happened. So that's my only critique. This book I did rate a 3.5 star, so it wasn't like up there, but it was still a very good time, very enjoyable read. Do recommend if you want like a palate cleanser thriller and you're kind of missing Love Island, this is a very good book for you. Our next book is My Little Baby Tom Lake. This book is written by Anne Patchett and it's the sweetest book. This was included on my reading vlog. I believe it's my reading audiobooks from Libby. This is just the cutest, sweetest book I've ever read. I have a lot more in-depth thoughts on that vlog, but I will share with you my review. It says, a very cute story about a mother and her daughters. At times, the pace of the book was slow and hard to stay locked in, but towards the 70% mark, things started to get tied up in a good way, and I ended up loving it. It was very sweet and heartwarming. I think everyone should read it just for fun. It's not anything groundbreaking, but it's a fun, calm fiction book for all ages, especially mother-daughters or grandmothers and granddaughters. Also, the audiobook being narrated by Meryl Streep was the cherry on top. Because if you didn't know, this is narrated by Meryl Streep, and Meryl Streep is one of my favorite actresses. I'm assuming probably one of your favorite actresses because I don't know a single person who doesn't like Meryl Streep. She's phenomenal, and what I absolutely loved is that while I was reading this book, I kind of pictured her as the main character, because the main character in the story, she is a older, almost retired woman. She has 3 grown children, and she is telling her daughters about her 20s and everything she did while she was an actress and dated a famous actor. And as children, they're gonna be very curious about why she didn't end up being a professional actress, why she didn't end up marrying this movie star, and it's just super cute. I was captured from the moment, and then the 30% mark hit and I was getting kind of bored. I would say from 30 to 70 it's kind of slow, but the first part is fast and the end part is fast. At the very end I was like, oh my god, everyone needs to read this, I love it so much. They also have a cherry farm, so it goes back and forth from their present day to her past when she was in her 20s, and in their present day they have a cherry farm and it's the cutest thing ever. Like, who has a cherry farm? It's so cute. They're just little farmers. And her daughters are like growing up. I think they're in their 20s now, and it's just so cute. It's just the epitome of like a cute mother-daughter relationship. So if you want a book that just has like cute fictional stories like that, I highly recommend. Like I said in my review, I would recommend this to any grandma, any aunt, any mom, any sister, any granddaughter, any daughter. It's so cute. I highly recommend. It's adorable, and I just think it's a palate cleanser. I think it's an easy read, and I think it's highly digestible and just nostalgic. Like, I feel like the one word for this is nostalgic. It's not groundbreaking, it's not jaw-dropping, it's not gonna blow your socks off with a plot. It's just nostalgic and comfortable. Does that make sense? This is a 4-star, by the way. 4 stars. We are getting to the end. I have to do a little stretch. By the way, did you see my new shirt? If you can't read it, it says there are 4 seasons: pre-Halloween, Halloween, post-Halloween, and halfway to Halloween, and then it just goes in a circle. And it's from Aerie, and it's the softest thing I've ever felt on my body. It's so comfortable. I got it yesterday and I'm very excited about it. I wore it immediately. The next book that we have is Never Whistle at Night by a lot of people. It says the main editors and contributors are Shane Hawk, Theodore C. Van Else Jr., and Stephen Graham Jones. As a preface, this book is very unique in its own right. Each chapter is a different story written by a different author, so that's why I can't really say a specific author, because every single chapter is a different author. That being said, it's a very unique experience reading the book. I will preface this by saying I think this book is better digested if you read 1 chapter a day or 1 chapter a week. I think it's a perfect book club read. I included this one in that Libby video as well, and I stated in there as well that I had a book that it was a similar layout that I read for a college class, and we read 1 chapter a week, and I ended up absolutely loving that book. I don't think this is the kind of book that you can binge in 1 sitting or in 1 weekend. I think that kind of ruins the stories, because once you get into a story, it ends, and it's kind of hard to stop the story and then start a new one and get connected to those people and then stop and then start a new one and then get connected to those characters and then stop and start new. I think I would have had a better experience if I put it on my nightstand, I read a chapter before bed each night, put it away, chapter before bed, put it away. I made the mistake of binging this in like a day or 2, and I just don't think it hit as well as it could have. So I ended up rating it a 3-star. Very different type of book for me. I didn't realize at first that each chapter is a different story written by a different person. The stop and start was hard to keep up with. I'm someone who loves to follow a story with depth and flow. This book is great for anyone wanting to try something new. I love the topic and the stories, but I would be invested in a story and it would abruptly end. Wish each story had its own book. And I feel like that's okay. I feel like everyone has has their own style and their own different ways that they like books to be and they like to read books. I just feel like it didn't fit with the way that I consume books and the way that I like to follow characters, because I love stories with a lot of emotional depth, a lot of character development, and you just can't get that when your entire story is a chapter long. And that has nothing to do with any of the authors, any people who contributed to the book, anything like that. I absolutely loved learning about different indigenous stories, and I believe each author is an indigenous author, and I'm not saying anything negatively about them, their experiences, their writing, anything like that. Great stories, great writers, just not my favorite type of structure, if that makes sense. Our third to last book is Silver Elite, the last book that I included on that Libby video. I'm so excited to talk about this book. I'm gonna read my review first. I said 4-star, maybe 4.25. I don't know. I loved it though. It wasn't a perfect 5-star, but it was pretty dang good. It gave Fourth Wing and Powerless vibes, which I loved because those are some of my favorite books slash couples. Intriguing from the start, super fun atmosphere with complex characters. I was shocked at the end with some of the twists and betrayals. Looking forward to the next book to see where the story goes. This book was very good, very well written, and it gave the same feeling to me as it did in Fourth Wing. Again, like I said in that reading vlog, it is not Fourth Wing. It has no dragons, it doesn't have Violet and Xaden, but the feeling that Fourth Wing gave in my soul is the same feeling that Silver Elite gave. That banter, the tension, the yearning, the love. I ate it up and it felt so good. I loved it so much. And it's very similar to the fact that in this book, we have a character named Ren, and she has powers she shouldn't. And if you've ever read Powerless, it's the opposite, where Peyton doesn't have powers and she has to blend in with all the people who do have powers. In this book, no one has powers and they kill anyone who does have powers. So she has to pretend that she doesn't have powers and just go on with life, just pretending that she's normal and doesn't get in trouble. But she does get the attention of the military, and I won't say why because I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say she gets the attention of the military. Then she has to go into this like military camp, which again reminds me of Fourth Wing, but it's not the same as Fourth Wing. Just I'm keeping them very distant because sometimes people hear that it's like Fourth Wing and then they just grab that and then run with it. I'm not saying it's Fourth Wing, I'm just saying it's similar with, they had like a college war camp. This one is like a military war camp, and they're training these people to be in their military and their Silver Elite squad, which is what she's trying to join. So that's kind of the vibes of it. It's very, very, very good. I'm very excited for the next book. The banter between the characters is so good. Oh my god, I literally can't wait for the next book. It's so good. I'm gonna stop rambling. This video is already long enough, and let's just get to the last two books. But it's so good, please read it. Also, I don't know why Silver Elite is so controversial apparently. Some people hate this book. I don't know why they hate it. I loved it, and it's okay to love things that other people hate, and it's okay to hate things that other people love. I can't speak anymore. This one's gonna be controversial because I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Also, did I say Silver Elite is by Danny Francis? I don't know if I said that. The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. The Crowns of Nyaxia series. You're not gonna like this, but I didn't like this book. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. I was not a fan of this book, and I really couldn't tell you why. Actually, I think I could. I could because I went into this book looking for a vampire romance, and that is just not what this book is. I went into it hearing that it's about vampires, and I left disappointed. Because on the back it says, for humans and vampires, the rules of survival rate are the same. Never trust, never yield, and always guard your heart. So I was like, bet, I'm making a vampire books reading vlog, so let me grab this book and I can include it in my reading vlog. But no, this isn't a vampire romance. This is a fantasy romance with people who happen to be vampires. And in my head, that's a very clear distinction because it has nothing to do with any vampire lore. They just happen to be in these like Hunger Games-esque trials where it's like a competition to fight to the death for some prize. They just happen to be in a vampire world. Our female main character is human, the male main character is a vampire. I also didn't really see their chemistry at all. And this is the first time that I've ever felt that way because I've heard people say that about my favorite books, and I'm like, what are you talking about? The chemistry is right there. The chemistry is right there hitting you in the face. But now I finally felt that way because when it got to the spicy scenes, I was like, ew, why are you touching her? Because I don't see anything between you two. The entire time, I knew he was a vampire, but I just pictured him as Cassian because they kept talking about his wings. So then the whole time I'm confused, like picturing a fae, but it's not a fae, it's a vampire, but then they term drop vampire, and that's the only way you would know that they're a vampire because it has nothing to do with vampires. It's just a fantasy trials book. I'm trying not to be harsh because one, I feel like this author would be a very, very great author author for me. I know she has a ton of other books available and I don't want to bash her ever because I do want to read her other books. And two, I could never write a book to save my life, so I'm never in the position to judge someone for writing a book. I just didn't really vibe with it. And I don't want to be too harsh. I hate hating on people and I hate hating on people's favorite books. So I'm just gonna say I didn't enjoy it. I don't remember what my review was. I honestly don't know how to feel. I went into this book looking for a vampire romance, which I think is my biggest downfall. This is a fantasy book with trials and high stakes that happens to have vampires in it. Nothing about the book screamed vampire. Honestly, if they didn't drop the term so often, you wouldn't even know any vampires were there. I know this is a very popular book, so it could be that my own perceptions got in the way. I am open to rereading in the future to give it another try. I found that the last 10% of the book was the best plot. Anything before that I could care less about. I get it set up that way to start a series, but I was overall let down. And if I have to hear the name Vincent one more time, it was too much. I listened to this one on audio, and the amount of times that they say Vincent in my ears made me want to scream. I should count one day how many times they say the name Vincent, because he's not even a main character, but they say his name over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and it really annoyed me. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Again, I hate shitting on people's favorite book. It's a very, very popular book. It has a 4.28 on Goodreads. That's impressive, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't like it. I really wanted to like this series and read the entire series. I just couldn't get into it, and I'm really, really upset about it. All right. The last and final book. I can't believe we're ending on this book because it's such a downer. I read Lightfall by Ed Crocker and I DNF'd it. I can't believe we're ending on a DNF, but it's the last book that I read in August. I DNF'd Lightfall around 50% and I counted it towards my Goodreads goal because I count DNFs over 50%. I just didn't really care for this book. I read this during my vampire reading vlog and it just doesn't give vampire. This book says a novel of vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. Lightfall is a stunning debut epic fantasy by Ed Crocker for fans of J. Kristoff's Empire of the Vampire and Richard Swanson's The Justice of Kings. So it involves vampires, werewolves, sorcerers, and I swear 50% through the book they didn't even talk about any werewolves. Genuinely, I can't remember what this book is about, to be honest. For centuries, vampires freely roamed the land until the Greys came out of nowhere, wiping out half the population in a night. The survivors fled to the last vampire city of First Light, where the rules are simple. If you're poor, you drink weak blood. If you're nobility, you get the good stuff, and you can never ever leave. Palace maid Sam has had enough of these rules, and she's definitely had enough of cleaning the bedpans of the lords who enforce them. When the son of the city's ruler is murdered and she finds the only clue to his death, she seizes the chance to blackmail her way into a better class and better blood. She falls in with the Leeches, a group of rebel maids who reign in the worst of the lords. Soon she's in a league with a sorcerer whose deductive skills make up for his lack of magic, a deadly werewolf assassin, and a countess who knows a city's worth of secrets. There's just one problem. What began as a murder investigation has uncovered a vast conspiracy by the ruling elite, and now Sam must find the truth before she becomes another victim. If she can avoid getting murdered, she might just live forever. Again, don't know where all that was because 50% through the book I couldn't tell you a single thing that they were doing. It's a really cool book though. I got this at the Barnes & Noble 50% off sale for hardcovers, on select hardcovers, and I saw it and I thought it would be a great book to read, but I just didn't like it. So I DNF'd it. And that is the last of the books, actually. Thank you for staying this long. I've been filming for about an hour, so who knows how long this video is gonna be. But those are all of my books from my summer reading. If you want to follow along and see all the books that I read for fall, and then stay tuned for my fall wrap-up, please subscribe. I post fun book content. I love to post reading vlogs, and I'm now getting into other bookish content, so please follow along, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!